we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for coming today. I'm very, very happy to be here. My name is Matt Winkler. I manage the program management and product management team for the Azure Portal, mobile app, and Copilot. And I'm joined by my engineering manager, Ruhiyyih Mahalati, who will be speaking a little bit later and getting into the details of what we're up to. And I'm here on behalf of a team of engineers, designers, product managers, researchers, data scientists, marketers, all sorts of folks. And we're really, really excited to share what we've been up to with Copilot in Azure. And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to share a little bit of an overview of what is Copilot in Azure. Then we're going to talk about what are the learnings that we've had. Then we'll switch over and Ruhiyyih's going to chat and dive deep into the architecture of what's been built and walk through some of the new capabilities that we're really excited to talk about. We'll finish up the day with next steps and then a Q&A. And the Q&A, you can either submit questions online or we'll be able to take the questions from within the room. So, Copilot in Azure. Quick show of hands, how many folks have tried Copilot in Azure? Okay, awesome. For the rest of you, I hope you get excited about it and want to try it. For those of you that have used it, thank you. If you sent us thumbs up or thumbs down, thank you. That ends up in our inboxes, and we're always excited to hear what people think and what's working and what needs to get better. So let's dive on in. So, Copilot in Azure is our AI companion to simplify how you design, operate, optimize, and troubleshoot applications, services, and infrastructure that are running in the cloud or the edge. And we launched this at Ignite in November. So we've been in a public preview, and we've been doing a lot since then. And that's what we're going to spend some time talking about today. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what Copilot in Azure is trying to do. And what we're trying to build here are experiences to help generate deep insights about your environment and your operations, discover new functionality or discover the right functionality and how to use that, and also do complex tasks faster. We know that administering and interacting with cloud infrastructure and services, there's a lot there. There's a broad surface area. That surface area is constantly expanding. Each one of the things that you deploy is getting more interesting and adding new capabilities. And along with that is this challenge of how do I reason over this? How do I learn about this? How do I optimize it? And when we look at the tasks that our users are trying to accomplish, we really found them falling into these 4 buckets. Designing, how do I lay out my entire infrastructure and my architecture? Which services do I choose? How would I configure them to reach different outcomes? Right? I may want to optimize for resiliency. I may want to optimize for performance. I may want to optimize for cost. Operations. One of my favorite examples that we heard from a user of Copilot is they had gotten a ping about an issue that needed to get fixed in their production environment. And they didn't quite know where it was. They knew they had some ports open. And so they were able to go to Copilot and say, hey, show me all of the machines that have ports open. And they were able to resolve that in minutes, as opposed to how they described it. They would have probably spent an hour or 2 trying to figure that out. And so we really want to take the operational environment and increase the productivity there. Mentioned optimizing for cost, resiliency, performance. Oftentimes you want to optimize both an individual resource as well as the collection of those interoperating together. And so one of the things we're really excited about is how can we take AI to reason over all of the data about your services in order to provide those optimization suggestions. And then finally, troubleshooting. Things will go wrong. They might go wrong in code. They might go wrong with how something's configured. They might go wrong because somebody else did something. And so whatever we can do to help you mitigate those incidents faster is time that we all get back to do other things. And then where does this live? So this lives inside, we're working to bring this to all of the experiences for managing and administering Azure. And so that's in the portal. It's also in the mobile app and in the command line interfaces as well. We'll talk a little bit about the portal and mobile app later today. And so what I'd like to start off with is a little bit of a walkthrough of Copilot in Azure. And I'm going to start here, just a quick disclaimer. In the interest of time, we've recorded all the videos and embedded them in the deck so I don't have to try and type and talk at the same time. That also lets us pack in a bunch more demos, which we're pretty excited about. So this is the Azure portal. I've woken up, I've logged in. What you'll notice is right next to the search bar on the right is the Copilot button. This is going to open the chat experience over on the right-hand side. And what you'll see here is a Copilot chat experience. And we start off with a number of suggestions or prompt starters of what you might be able to do with Copilot in Azure. One thing that we learned is that if we start from a blank slate, sometimes folks don't know what to ask. And so one of the things, each of those themes, design, operate, optimize, and troubleshoot, will suggest some prompts there that you can get started with, or you can just go ahead and go and type in your prompt itself. And so what I'm going to type in here is forecasting my cost for the next 3 months. We're going to recognize the intent here. We're going to reach out to our cost management capabilities to understand your costs looking forward. Logical next question is, hey, how can I reduce my costs? This is going to, again, go and look at the suggestions that are provided through the cost management tools to suggest, hey, these are the most expensive resources. These are where you have the most opportunity to reduce costs. Go ahead and click here if you want to open up for deeper suggestions or browse to that specific item as well. And so that's a quick whirlwind tour. You can walk up to this and ask pretty much any question about Azure or about your Azure environment, and we're going to do our best to answer that question or that prompt. Ruhiyyih will talk a little bit more about how that happens in a little bit. But first, we've been doing this for about 6 months now, and I'd love to talk about some of the learnings that we've had. And these have come in lots of different ways. They've come from conversations, they've come from emails that land in our inbox or our boss's inboxes, come from the thumbs up and thumbs down. That's a really great signal for us for what is working or what may not be working. And I'd like to start off with a video of 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, who works for Mesh AI. He's a platform consultant there, and he's been one of our early adopters of Copilot in Azure.
One of the great benefits of Azure Copilot is to be able to retrieve information back on your Azure policies. This is a great benefit if you want to see if your policy is conforming to the governance standards. Also, if there was a lack of information or description on that particular Azure policy, and ask the Azure Copilot information on what this Azure policy is doing. Also, the other benefits I found, if you're coming from a less technical background, to be able to retrieve that information back in a natural language.
So I love that story because policy there's a lot you can do with policy, right? And this ability to be able to talk about policy and understand it, but understand it in the context of my environment is something that we see that customers are really excited about. So what are some of the things that we learned, and what are some of the things that we've done as a result of those learnings? Well, as I started in the initial demo, there's just getting help getting started. How can we continue to improve the documentation? How can we add these prompt starters, these suggestions that are going to be relevant to you in order for me to start using Copilot in Azure? And so we've also invested in the first run experience, the welcome messages, and we're going to keep revising those based on the learnings. Another thing that we heard from a lot of folks was really around trust. And when we started Copilot in Azure, one of our fundamental grounding assumptions and design principles was that we will always operate within the context of the user. So we're never going to have elevated privileges. And so if I have access in Azure to something, then Copilot can go ahead and help me understand that, ask questions about it, process data about it. But we want to keep pushing down that path. So one of the things that we've done is introduce admin manageability. So the ability to actually manage who within your organization has access to Copilot and what they can do with it. We've learned a lot about how important context is, how critical it is to understand when someone types in a prompt, there's a lot of different things they could be referring to. How can we quickly get to try and answer the right question and answer it with the right answer? The other thing that we're doing here, if you were at the keynote this morning, there's lots of things that are happening in the AI space. And so one thing that we're also doing is continuing to evolve and upgrade the models and the infrastructure underneath us. And that raises the capability across the entire stack as we do that. It also gives us some nice benefits in terms of fewer errors, increased performance, and performance and reliability end up being one of the things that we see really driving satisfaction, that and accuracy of the responses that get sent back. And then for folks that have started using it that really enjoy it, the ask that we get is, how can I get more surface area that does more, right? Hey, I'm using this service and I'd really like some troubleshooting that's deeply related to that service. How can we go and build that capability? And this has been one of the really exciting things as we've been building this is engaging with all of the teams across Azure that are building services who want to be able to contribute knowledge and capabilities into Copilot in Azure. So I want to show off two other things that we've built based on some of those learnings. The first is around forms. And so what we've done here is we've taught Copilot the ability to interact with any form in the portal. You can imagine across the hundreds of different services in Azure, there's a lot of UI in the portal. And what we want to be able to do is talk to that UI through Copilot. And so anywhere where we've got a form, we can actually think about that form. And so here, I'm trying to create a face API service type. I'm going to say, I want to fetch all the resource groups, suggest a name, and suggest a pricing tier, right? Now, if I showed you this demo a year ago, we'd just focus on the left. This is the way you create a face API. What we can do now is use Copilot on the right to say, hey, I have a naming specification. I'd like you to suggest a name based on the resource group. I'd also like you to suggest the pricing tier. And then you can go ahead and apply that. Another design principle that we had very early on is any side effect causing action that we can take is always in the user's control. So you'll see here, we surface back, hey, this is what I think you should name it. This is the pricing tier. We didn't just go ahead and create that for you. We said, hey, do you want to apply this, yes or no? And you'll see that pattern repeated throughout Copilot in Azure to make sure that you're always in control. You can always review what we're suggesting before you actually take that operation. The other thing that we've done is build on top of the Azure Resource Manager, which is the control plane or API for all of Azure. One of the most common uses that we've seen with Copilot in Azure is querying the Azure Resource Graph. And that's really good to understand the environment. But if you think about ARM as an API, we also surface a bunch of operations on the resources. And so what we've enabled Copilot to be able to do is help you perform any of those operations, again, in a safe manner. And so here, we're going to say, I want to restart an AKS cluster, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, restart, that's an operation. This is the AKS cluster. Hey, the ARM API surfaces a start operation. Is that what you want to call? Again, we're going to surface back here. Are you sure you want to do this? Then clicking yes, I'm going to go ahead and invoke that operation on ARM. That's going to go ahead and restart the AKS cluster. So these last two capabilities we think are really powerful for you to be able to operate across all of Azure and across any resource type. And so with that, I will hand it over to Ruhiyyih, who's going to dive into the architecture and some of the new capabilities.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be sharing with you on how we have enabled the Copilot in Azure, how we've gone ahead building it so that it can really scale across hundreds of Azure services, but still come back and give you those relevant, very specific, customized insights and actions based on your environment, based on your infrastructure. I'm also going to be sharing some of the hard work the team has been doing to bring in new and additional capabilities in Copilot in Azure. So let's get started with that. In terms of how we have gone ahead and built the Copilot in Azure, it's really built on three main components in the architecture. On the top layer, you'll see the familiar front end. This is our portal client, the mobile or the CLI client. But this is also where we have implemented that conversational UX, the ability to collect additional context from where you are in the portal. For example, if you're on a VM blade, can we fetch the context and the information on the VM you have selected, the VM size, the versions, and information, etc. This, along with your conversation and question, then gets sent on to the orchestrator layer. The orchestrator layer is a sophisticated processing engine. This is where we make sure that your conversations are grounded, based on a lot of information and insights we have in the Azure environment. Whether it's service telemetry, whether it's Azure Resource Graph, whether it's docs and learns, grounded in Azure documentation. This enables the large language models at the orchestration layer to then go and get additional plugins called in to bring in service-specific actions or insights. For example, we can go ahead and call in a Kubernetes cluster plugin, which can bring in some insights about how you can do YAML doc editing and things like that. Or we can plug in the cost management plugin, which brings in more detailed insights for how cost management, like Matt was showing, can be done. And this is also the layer where we make sure principles of safety, security, privacy, responsible AI are all covered, and we have done the grounding and the filtering of the responses both into and out of these orchestrator and copilots to make sure we're always adhering to it. And the third component, which is the AI infrastructure, this is again built on top of Microsoft's AI infrastructure that makes sure that we can always harness the power of all of the latest models and innovations happening in that layer that feed in all the way through the stack. Let's take one more step into it and see how does the data flow and how does the security boundary of the data is kept in the conversation. As I was mentioning, so we start from the user portal, and again, this doesn't even always have to be a question or a conversation you have started. You can interact with Copilot based on some of the actions or notifications you might see in the portal and invoke the Copilot with a nudge to say, let's get started on this one. Again, we have collected the additional context of the user from the user journey in that session, which is passed on to the orchestration layer. All of this is, again, in the context of you as a user. The data and the access that Copilot has is always in the security context of the user. So, for example, if you as a user don't have access to that data, Copilot will not have access to that data. Or if you do not have permissions to go run an ARM operation or an API call, Copilot will not be able to do that and will come back and share the relevant error or information back to you. As I mentioned, so this is how the extensibility of the orchestrator can be done across hundreds of Azure services. These plugins in itself can have different implementations. For example, the Docs and Learn plugin can have its own RAG model implementation, which can then query over hundreds of these documentation and doc site and do the indexing and everything over there. Or we could have a compute plugin which can go ahead and call other endpoints like Azure Resource Manager or a Custo endpoint to bring in the additional insights and specifics from service telemetry or your environment to really make those insights and recommendations coming back from the Copilot relevant and customized to your scenario, to your environment, to your conversation, and not a very generic docs-only help. And when the data comes back, this response is pushed up again to the client, where we make sure the right visual elements are used to surface the data in the most appealing format, whether it's charts or forms or text. The client, as always, can always reach out to other endpoints like ARM to gather additional information that it might want to surface and share at that point. One more thing I would want to emphasize and make sure I mention is we never use your data or the conversation you're having with us to train our models. And all of this is built with privacy, security, and responsible AI, and that's built in at all the layers and multiple layers of the architecture throughout, and not just at one point. So with that background, I would love to start sharing some of the work that we have done in enhancing the capabilities of the Copilot. And I'll go through a series of few demos, just sharing a glimpse of what you can try and use the Copilot to help you in your everyday needs. Many of you have actually shared feedback with us that it would be nice if we could simplify the troubleshooting experience in the portal. And we wanted to see how Copilot can help us here. Let's take a quick look at this presentation where I want to go ahead and start this virtual machine. I go in the UI and start, but I get the error saying it cannot be for the right reasons because the VM has a lock on it. Now I can go and try to figure out what's happening through multiple clicks and some documentation help. I see that the virtual machine, the resource group, they both have locks on it. I can now manually try to figure out how I remove the logs, start the virtual machine, and put the logs back on. Or let's try and see if Copilot helps me here. So if I go and click that button with Copilot, given that Copilot has the information and the context of what you're doing in this particular portal session, it quickly identifies what was that error about and shares information with you on how you can, if you want, go and manually fix it. Or again, like Matt was saying, if the Copilot takes any action on your behalf, it will always ask you for that confirmation. So I can confirm with Copilot, yes, I want you to go ahead and take this action. So the Copilot is now actually removing the logs from the resources with your permission, with your access, and then it will start the VM and reapply the logs. As you can see, we also make sure that all the steps in the action that are being performed with your access permission are being shared in the chat window, so you're always informed on what's happening. And if any errors or failures happen, those would be surfaced here as well. And I can always go back and check that the VM was started and the logs have been put back in place as well. So that is troubleshooting made easier in just few clicks and in few seconds with the help of Copilot. Matt was mentioning Kubernetes service, and many of you actually probably have been using Azure Kubernetes services. And if you do, you probably have spent quite a bit of time working with or editing YAML documents. With the integration and the extensibility of plugins which are specific to Kubernetes service, we can actually bring in detailed help on how you can work with YAML documents. So in this example, again in the familiar Copilot chat experience, I quickly go and ask the Copilot, can you create a YAML deployment for me? Now, it will help me navigate to the YAML deployment editor in the portal right away. I can provide additional context to Copilot on what do I want in this YAML document, like it's a voting app with the specific image I want in there. This looks great. I can review the code. I want to add a persistent storage. I can go ahead and, again, ask Copilot to add persistent storage, and it will take that input, will work on the YAML document, and as you can see, it will show the changes that it's going to be applying if you want it to. Also, this experience should look and feel very similar if you've been in the GitHub Copilot on the code editing experience here. And the changes look good. I go ahead and apply, and just in those few seconds, I'm able to not just create, but apply those changes as well. What if I had a YAML code not written by me and I'm trying to figure out what happened here? I can simply highlight the code in the YAML document, and Copilot can do the explanation of that code in the context of rest of the document as well. So that's power to you, being able to modify and add YAML documents in context in place. Similarly, for managing AKS clusters, you can always, like Matt shared, there was an example where we can always call the ARM APIs to do those. We also have the integration where we can actually invoke Copilot and use natural language conversations to invoke kubectl commands to do the management much easier as well. In this example, for example, I'll go and ask Copilot to show me all the pending pods across my namespaces in the AKS cluster. As you can see, I did not provide the context of which AKS cluster, neither have I selected the cluster on the side. But Copilot will help me improve my prompt and suggest, is this the cluster you want us to go select? So it helps me navigate to the cluster's view and select the cluster. Once I've done that, it can generate the kubectl command, and the run command is always waiting for you as a user to take an action on. Do you want to go ahead with that command or not? You will always be in the know-how of what commands you want to run. But again, as you see, using natural language, I am able to run many of these kubectl commands and manage and operate my clusters very efficiently and effectively. And these are not only just read-only operations. I can always understand the state of my clusters and then use the same run command to modify the state as well. For example, I see that I have one replica. I want to go ahead and make it 5 replicas because one is really not a great idea. And there we go. I can ask Copilot to do it, confirm that I want this to be happening, and with those few clicks, my number of replicas would be updated from 1 to 5. And there we go. It has made managing Kubernetes much easier and simpler just using natural language conversations with Copilot. Another one of my favorite examples that I wanted to share, and something the team has been working really hard in improving what we can do with the integration of Resource Graph and Copilot. This is where we bring in the capability of managing large-scale environments much easier and simpler, and we enable you to run and build those complex queries very efficiently. With just two quick examples, I want to show the power here. For example, I want to see all my Linux machines with their creation dates. Yes, the Copilot gets the context of me with my access. I see the results, but I also have the resource graph query editor opened right there with that query that was used. Or I can try and figure out which of my resources or VMs have a public IP address with octet 172. Now, I don't need to know the complex joins. I don't need to know all the properties. Copilot can generate that query for me and the results as well. This makes me and enables me to manage my cloud assets across hundreds of subscriptions across regions much easier and simpler with the help of Copilot and the embedded experience in Portal. Many of you also like coming to Portal and figuring out the new features that you've been waiting for, just released and enabled. You look at the feature, you try it out, and that looks great. But now you would like to actually go ahead and automate it in your CI/CD pipeline. With the integration of CLI and Copilot, we have made that very seamless and easy as well. So in the same Copilot experience, I can go ahead and ask Copilot to generate a CLI script to create a VM. And as you can see, I have the script with the information on the different parameters and how I can do made available right there. I can provide additional context to the Copilot so that I can have specific values for those placeholder variables. And I can just provide naturally, these are the regions or these are the resource groups I want. Copilot will take that context, go back and modify that command with those specific values so that you can pick up that script and just run it. So you can see the values have been replaced. I can copy this command and quickly run it in Cloud Shell in the portal right there. With that, some of you might say, well, I want to do PowerShell and not CLI. I'm happy to share that we have PowerShell integrated in Copilot as well, and not just CLI commands. You can generate PowerShell commands as well. And given that I have the context in the conversation, I don't have to reset the conversation with Copilot. I can simply ask, generate me a PowerShell script for the same command that you just did. And there we go. We have a PowerShell command generated in the Copilot as well with all of those variables and context in place. And not just simple commands. We can actually ask Copilot to generate some scripts as well. I can create a PowerShell script which can create those VMs, 5 of those VMs in a quick script. And the script is generated with all of that context, which I can now copy and run it in my CI/CD pipeline or in my DevOps pipelines. And I always have the ability to verify, ask, figure out what that script is doing before I copy it and run it. Awesome. We love to make sure that we can provide the tools of your choice, and those are all integrated in Copilot in Azure as well. So Terraform is another very popular tool that a lot of you use for managing your cloud infrastructure. And we are happy to share that we are able to use Copilot in Azure, or you can use Copilot in Azure to generate your Terraform configurations as well. Like in an example here, I'm asking Copilot to generate a Terraform configuration to create a private endpoint for Key Vault. You can review the configuration that got created with detailed explanation of what this configuration does. I see that I'm missing a DNS zone in there. I can ask Copilot to go ahead and add that. And you will see that the configuration was modified and updated. Everything looks good to me. I can quickly copy that, open it in VS Code. And as you can see, there's a lot of work done to make sure the syntax is accurate so you don't see any red squiggly lines, and we all like that. I can actually run the Terraform plan to make sure it's creating the resources that I expect it to. Looks like, yes, I'm going to create those 7. I can then run the apply command, and from creating the configuration to able to verify and quickly apply my Terraform configuration, all of this integration and power is made easier with Copilot and Azure. Last but not the least, I'm also excited to share that we have Copilot in the Azure mobile app available as well. This is so you can actually ensure all of your cloud assets and resources you can manage from anywhere, anytime. And if we go in the experience, you will see the mobile app, the familiar Copilot icon on the top. You can initiate the chat conversation here. I can either go with some of the initial prompt starters, or I can ask a conversation and say, hey, I want to modify my home page or personalize my home page. Copilot has the context of you as the user, the OS you're running in. The head that comes back or the text that comes back will be customized to your environment. I can also use Copilot to run CLI scripts or create those CLI scripts that I was able to do it in the portal client. And these are all using the same plugins behind the scenes so that the same information and same plugins can be called from any of these clients. And similarly, we can actually do the same thing for the resource graph queries as well, so that you can always keep up with any changes in your environment, understand the health of your services, or any alerts that are being generated in your environment from anywhere while you're with the mobile app as well. So these are some of the few demos. Again, we love feedback, so would love for you to try some of these features and give us the feedback. But this is few of the features that the team has been busy working on that we wanted to share. But let me call back Matt to talk about some of the next steps here.
Awesome. Thanks, Ruhi. And I can confirm it is on the mobile app. I'll talk about how to get that in just a second. All right. So Ruhi just walked through a lot of capabilities that have been built that we're really, really excited about. Again, going back to some of the learning that we've had over this time, what we're hearing from you, what we're seeing in terms of what folks are doing is really these scenarios around trying to understand and search your environment, finding the right resource, finding the right setting for a resource. We see a lot of folks who are pretty excited about the experience being right there in the portal, being aware of, hey, I'm looking at this cluster and I can ask what's going on. I can be on a database and I can ask, hey, I'd like to run these queries. And we're aware of that. We're not just returning an answer that's grounded on the docs. We're actually trying to understand what's happening in the environment. The natural language query construction is one that continues to amaze me. It's one of my favorite features. Someone will ask a question about our environment, and I'm able to use that to answer that a lot quicker than I would have. And even just to get the KQL that I can then customize or modify or move into another tool is pretty powerful. And then a lot of folks are really excited about the fact we're moving this now to be more action-oriented, so you can get to the outcome that you want. I want to deploy this type of a cluster. I want to understand what changes I need to make to improve my resiliency. And again, kind of always doing this in the context of the user that's in the portal right now. So all of your investments in RBAC and policy and whatnot carry forward and are first-class citizens here. All right, so a little bit of a timeline view. So up until now, we've had signups for the public preview. And I'd like to thank everybody who raised their hand earlier. That means you or someone in your organization signed up. Going forward, we're going to be removing that sign-up requirement. So we're going to be in an open preview so that anybody who wants to have access can. We're going to continue. We're going to have the new capabilities that we've shown in the demos earlier are all available. We're continuing to upgrade the underlying models. And then I'll talk a little bit about access management on the next slide. If we think about the path forward from here, the next big step as an Azure service grows up is general availability. We're going to continue to keep pushing on AI quality. This is where, every month, every week, it feels like there's something new we can take advantage of. And we want to keep doing that so we can get the right answers to you. We're going to keep adding capabilities based on the learning and feedback that we get, and then we're going to continue to move forward on the management experience for your ability to manage Copilot. In an ongoing fashion, there are teams across Azure that every week are shipping updates and improvements based on what feedback they're getting. So please, like those thumbs up and thumbs down, those are really, really important, right? If you like something, tell us. If you don't like something, tell us. And when you do that, it actually will pop up a little bit of a questionnaire. You can say like, hey, this was not the right answer because of this reason. Or this is why I really, really liked it. We're going to keep expanding on the capabilities and continuing to integrate deeper into the different experiences. So finishing up and talking about availability. So starting next week, we're going to start rolling this out more broadly across all of Azure. And so you'll start seeing the Copilot button light up if you don't have that available to you. If you want to configure access to that, we're introducing a management surface in the portal to allow you to configure and manage access to Copilot for your organization. So if you want to enable that for specific users or groups, you can do that. If you want to use that in order to kind of do a slower rollout of these capabilities in your organization, you're empowered to do that. That feature should turn on next week in order to be able to kind of manage Copilot. And we'll keep adding capabilities there in terms of how is Copilot being used in your organization. And then anybody who's already in the preview, that's not going to change. That's going to keep going forward. So just don't worry about that. Couple of additional resources as we wrap up here. Later today, upstairs on the stage, there's a really great session. It's going to be like a quick demo session of some troubleshooting in app services. That's pretty cool. Tomorrow, going to talk about better together, building and deploying to Azure with GitHub. If you were at Satya's keynote this morning, you saw some of these capabilities. We're pretty excited about that. And then on Thursday, the SQL team will wrap up and talk about the power of AI and Copilot for Azure databases. There's some really, really great work that's happening there in terms of helping me construct queries, understanding what queries performances have changed. I'm not going to steal all their thunder. I've seen what they're doing. It's pretty cool. I definitely, if you're a database person, go check that out. We've also got a meetup booth upstairs. We've got folks from the team that are super excited to be here and would love to chat. Come tell us what you like, what you don't like. And then we've got a couple of links over on the right-hand side for blog posts, our documentation. That's always getting updated. And again, on any of these things, please submit feedback. If there's something we can do to help you more, let us know. Worst case, send me an email. It's mwinkle@microsoft.com. And I would love to hear what we can do better. And so with that, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I know you've got a lot of sessions you can choose from. I thank you for choosing this one. Really excited to see what you do with Copilot in Azure. And at that point, we'll turn it over to Q&A. And let's see, do we have any from online?
We have one. What permissions does Copilot need in my environment?
It's on. OK, so any operations or any of the demos that you saw, these are the permissions that you as a user have access to. So the data access. So do you have read access, write access? Do you have access to those resources or not? So Copilot is really using the permission or the access that you have that is being used to perform those operations on your behalf. So there is no additional access or permission that Copilot needs, but it is using your existing permissions, like you would go in the portal and start a VM. But if you didn't have a permission to see that VM or start that VM, you can't. And the similar permission is what Copilot has. And all of these permissions and RBAC is managed through Azure Resource Manager. That's the control plane layer that we have.
OK, we've got a couple questions in the room. I think, are we running a mic?
Yes.
OK.
There was one on the back there.
Yes.
Oh, hold on. There's a mic coming.
Yeah, so when you mentioned the capabilities with Terraform, I got really excited. Obviously, my next question is going to be, is ARM supported, or I'm sorry, Bicep supported as well, or is there an additional timeline for that?
So the Bicep support is coming soon. We're working on it. You can create ARM deployment templates, but Bicep is also coming soon. So very soon, like Matt was saying, we're working on making sure we can keep releasing capabilities and features on a weekly basis or daily basis. So yes, that's coming as well. And thank you for that feedback.
And I'll translate engineer speak to PM speak. It's coming sooner rather than later. Right here?
With all the features that you have going on with the Azure Copilot, have you guys given any thought to kind of attaching it to the Azure pricing calculator to be able to basically ask Copilot to price out a whole environment utilizing the AI stack? Oh, thank you. Clearly all the consultants in the room like that question.
For the folks online, the room broke out in spontaneous applause with that question. So there's a couple of different things. We've got a fair amount of integration right now with cost management. That's kind of looking at your costs as they've happened. The pricing calculator is a scenario that we've heard about. And right now, I think we'll do kind of individual pricing. Pricing ends up being an interesting challenge of like, hey, we just don't want to scrape the website, right? Because different customers have different agreements and, kind of all of that. And so we will work towards that. I would say that's not as soon as Bicep. But if there's lots more clapping, we could potentially reprioritize. All right, let's get a question from this side of the room. Thanks, gentleman up front.
So you mentioned Azure Copilot utilizing the token and the permission of the user. Is there any traceability that the user utilized Azure Copilot to perform a task in audit logs or in,
Yes, so we, like the regular telemetry and logging that we do from the portal, that is being logged, and that is being logged as under the user itself. So if you go in activity logs or you look at the telemetry logs from the service, you will see the operations with the username associated with that operation, and you would be able to very easily see that this operation was done by this user. And it will also be there in activity logs and everything. There will be some, but there is more enhancements and feedback that we've received to make sure that it's more explicit and clear that this is the user along with the Copilot in it. But yes, that will, if it's not already there, that will be there very soon.
And that's also where I'd love feedback from this group in terms of when we think about manageability or managing Copilot use within your organization or with folks who have access to your infrastructure. What all would you like to see there? There's kind of a number of interesting things we could do there, but we're definitely learning there. Any other questions right here?
Actually, I had two questions. One question was already addressed as part of the audit and compliance. So my second question is like, so what you showed on the Azure portal, what kind of extensibility model is it on the VS Code, right? Because sometimes as a developer, I spend most of my time on my VS Code. So I could see, instead of like switching the context between VS Code and browser to do these actions, what kind of extensibility model is it? Or is it the same kind of capability?
Talk about the integration.
Sure. Yeah, so that's one we're actively working on. So if you saw the demo this morning with GitHub Copilot where they did at Azure, our teams are working together, and like when it asks, I don't know which demo they showed this morning, but if you can go into VS Code and ask like, which storage accounts do I have in Southeast Asia? It's going to call that through that infrastructure that Ruhiyyih talked about and use to return that. Because we think it's super powerful to surface all of that Azure knowledge and information where people are at, right? And so I think you'll see us do more there. Oh, we got to get the person behind you real quick, and then we'll come back to this row. And we can also go back to this side of the room if anybody else over here wants to ask a question.
This might be a silly question, but we've been trying to use Copilot there for a while. If you click on the button and then click on the ellipses, the links for terms of service and privacy both go to privacy. My legal department needs terms of service. How can I get that?
We will fix that.
Thank you.
We've actually been reaching out to our Microsoft rep for 2 months now.
Okay. 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀@microsoft.com. Just send me email. But yeah, that's a bug. We'll get that fixed.
I think there was one question up front. 1 minute left.
It's more of a suggestion. If the output can become multimodal, like can it generate images? Like, would it be possible for it to create architecture diagrams based on your infrastructure?
That is definitely in our backlog. Currently, what we support is text and charts and some of those forms, but that is definitely in our backlog. So thank you for that feedback.
All right. Well, we did get a question over here. Let's sneak it in real quick. We're just about at time, but I want this side of the room to feel included.
You talked about diagnostics capabilities, right? So whenever you run a diagnose with Copilot, does it plug into the platform level metrics where it might be able to detect, right, there are some outages already pending on this particular service, performance level issues on the platform side?
So yes, it does have live telemetry, service health information and data. Again, as long as you as a user have access to that telemetry and data, the Copilot will rational over that data along with data from resource graph and resource manager. But yes, observability data, our metrics data, our service health data, all of that is part of data access that Copilot has, as long as you as a user have access. And it definitely rationals over all of that to come back with insights.
All right.
There is a outage for SQL Server in EastUS. Will it be able to, correlate the issue with that?
So that's a very specific scenario. We can look into it, but it definitely has access to that information and data, and hopefully it should and it could. But it depends on the scenario exactly that you're saying, if that makes sense.
And so with that, we will go ahead and close down here. We'll be hanging out there. We can also go upstairs. Again, I just want to thank everybody for coming today. I hope you have a wonderful build. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.